Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Wednesday morning over here from a very likely very volatile upcoming day, as we do have CPI prints a little bit later. And I wanted to follow up on some very higher term time frame, very important charts that we've been looking at over the past couple weeks now coming to fruition as this week would suggest. Anyways, before we get into that, I do want to just quickly point out for anyone who does have access to the Jewel Lite or the Jewel itself that there is a video right here where my cursor currently is on a very simple strategy that you can use at your disposal whenever you desire. And it's also good insight as to how I kind of backtest and then formulate strategies in a very simplistic way. But in this case, you know, works and simplistic is not necessarily a bad thing. All right, sweet. Let's just jump into it right now. Keeping in mind that, again, CPI coming out a little bit later today, probably going to be the impetus for a nice volatile move as it typically is. Anyways, first things first, I wanted to follow up on this indicator over here. This is a stochastic momentum oscillator versus the volatility of stochastic momentum. The volatility of stochastic momentum is represented by this moving metric that my cursor is currently tracing over right now. And essentially, anytime that it does get to extreme lows, which are defined as, you know, basically below these regions right here, as represented by these green vertical bars, the expansion phase from those extreme lows has led to an average move of about 28.85%, done over the course of just over 10 days. And the stochastic momentum oscillator itself has gone the correct direction on that volatility expansion for just under 89% of the time. So it does have a very high hit rate as far as that goes. You can reference the last signal that we got back on over here. You can see volatility expansion essentially happens from the, whoops, let me actually make sure that it's visible to you. There we go. You can see that volatility expansion happens from these extreme lows, and once that gets going, the direction of the stochastic momentum oscillator was obviously pointed to the downside. And what did we have right there? A 38.37% move to the downside done over the course of 11 days. That sounds a lot like the average, actually, because it quite literally is pretty much bang on with it, to be fair. Or actually, I guess it's a little bit of a bigger move in this case. My apologies. There's a 2 handle instead of a 3. Either which way, though, the reason why I'm pointing it out right now is because we have a very similar setup on this current iteration in comparison to, you know, well, basically all of them, but I think this one's just very visibly clear right here, where it kind of bases off on these lows, you know, day or two, and then gets going rather abruptly. So in this case, just like we were speaking about for the past couple of days, that as long as Bitcoin was above the stochastic momentum pivot, that more upside was likely. Now the inverse is true. And of course, we have yet to see full-on volatility expansion. And for what it's worth, once it does start to base off on these extreme lows, you will notice that the stochastic direction has, you know, actually been set pretty much around that time. In this case, this one happens literally on this bar right here, which, you know, does turn, for example. And what do you know, on this case right here, we did get our closure yesterday. And for more aggressive people, you will probably already be looking at this as signal confirmed, essentially. So in this case, that would suggest that the downside is significantly more likely than the upside in this case. And if we were to now play around with numbers using about the average as a guide, 28% to the downside would actually put Bitcoin on new lows, well, for CME at least, as that would be about $17,500 or so. Keep in mind, there's some variance with these reads, of course. We have seen as high as, you know, as high as about, a little bit over 40%. We've seen as low as about 12.5%. So again, it's not, you know, these are averages, not exact numbers, but gives us kind of a range. On the upper end, we could expect, you know, slightly new lows. On the lower end, we could probably expect closer to 20,000 or a little bit above 20,000 in this case. So do want to be directly clear about what's at stake right here. Again, for the more conservative people, for the more aggressive people, this is already resolved. For the more conservative people, you're probably waiting for like a full-on tick to the upside on the volatility indicator right here. And if that does happen with Bitcoin closing yet again below 23,540, that would essentially be the signal. So it's a long day. Of course, CPI probably going to, you know, move the markets as it typically does. But if Bitcoin does fail to close below that level yet again, well, you already know where I'm going with that. I wanted to also point out this signal over here. Now, this signal was a big one that we've been focusing on basically for like the last few weeks, or actually not the last few weeks, like the last month and a half, going all the way back to early July. This was a BBWP representing volatility indicator versus stochastic momentum right here. And there's two things. One, the last signal that we observed in early July was way over here, of course. And basically, what did we see? We saw extremely low BBWP, which was below 10 percentile. The expansion phase from those extreme lows, typically as an average move over the last few years of, I think actually this one I've done for the past 3 years, of about 37.5%, done over the course of, about 17.5 days. Stochastic momentum oscillator's gone in the correct direction. This number should actually go up because we had this iteration worked out yet again. So I think it's going to be like, I don't know, 10 out of 12 or 10 out of 11, something like that. Anyways, high hit rate yet again here. So that move has played out. And just to, show anyone who has been on this channel for the past couple months here, we have it working yet again. This move, obviously 32.14% to the upside. I'd say that's very much comparable to the average, which is 37.5, 18 days. That was why we were kind of signaling caution coming into this week that it was, more likely to find highs or at least a bit of a pullback into a week like this. And now we have the signal setting up yet again as the 2-day BBWP indicator gets to extreme lows right here. And apologies for that. My volume is like way too loud. I don't know why. We were actually listening to gangster rap yesterday. Elsa loves Tupac, by the way, in case you wanted to know. Like if you ever want Elsa to start dancing uncontrollably, just play Tupac. It's very interesting to watch. Or Biggie, she says. Anyways, in this case, we're once again, at extreme lows. Now, a lot of the time it does kind of take some time to base around the extreme lows before we do see expansion. But in this case, the stochastic momentum oscillator has gone the correct direction on those volatility expansions, a high degree of the time. And right now it's pointed to the downside. Where is the momentum pivot? 23,800. So that goes as far to say that if Bitcoin closes below, especially the momentum pivot over here on the daily for CME, then that condition will be met for the 2-day over here on spot price action. And you'll have two major things, kind of coincide with each other, suggesting downside. I do think asking for a 37.5% or even a 28% move, as we observed earlier, to the downside from here is, kind of asking for a little bit much. I think like $20,000 to $21,000 is like very likely if that were to happen. But I'd kind of take it one step at a time, assuming that gets confirmed to begin with, which, it's a long day left to go. We've seen more crazy things than like a $500 rally within the course of 16 hours, of course. Anyways, moving on here, I wanted to point out a few other things. Okay, so what did I want to do over here? Well, first things first, let's go to spot price action. And then second things second, I think I need to first go over here. Yes, daily BBWP for spot price action is extremely low. So this kind of coinciding with the daily that we saw on CME. It's a really good indication that we're very likely to see a big move kind of occur from these levels. Probably is going to be like somewhere between 20 to 30%, if I had to guess. And of course, BBWP on its own does not imply direction, but when we look at and reference our momentum oscillators, what do we see? We see one, daily RSI has 1, 2, 3 drives of bearish divergence. The one thing that I could say against that is, well, this is, not even within the bullish control zone. So typically those are not that strong. 2, if we go back on over here, the daily stochastic momentum for spot price action is also crossing down as long as Bitcoin's below 23,750. So again, anything below 23,500 is, at least from the statistics and my personal opinion, very fucking bearish. But yeah, again, want to see that one confirmed, of course. And what else do we have? I think that is actually it for the daily. Other than that, if we wanted to go reference short-term time frame ranges to kind of get interesting areas to the upside and the downside in the short term, well, the short term right here, probably does try for a little bit of a bounce. I suspect that we're probably not going to see any sort of like a breakdown or breakout before CPI actually gets released. And if we do reference short-term time frame stochastic momentum, it's actually, it's pretty beat up here, but still pointed to the downside. But will flip to the upside on the next closure if price action does close above 23,350, a little bit further away right now. 6 hour is also nose diving as long as Bitcoin's below 23.8, and 12 hour is freshly nose diving below 23.4. And can we find something for the fucking boolaws? Hourly is up above 22.9. Holy shit, there we go. And bi-hourly is probably also up as well. It is 22,950, so there you go. So maybe a little bit of short-term ebb and flow. Maybe Bitcoin tries for another short-term rally, but assuming that any sort of rally that fails essentially to get back above 23.5, well, probably looking at some downside. As far as closures go, well, just want to see a closure below that last local low. And then at that point, perhaps a bounce along the way, but ultimately I'd be looking somewhere down around this 618 fib retracement, which is pretty much around that last low from 26th of July, which is low 21,000 bucks, so 21,200 or so for a bit of a bounce with, again, a short-term one perhaps in between at about 21,850. Anyways, other than that, I think that's a good place for me to step off here. I should probably remind myself to talk about Bybit options. There's 50% off if you do use the link in the description below if you're an options trader. What else do we have? Instagram, I've been uploading actually like crazily recently there, and it's pretty cool to see it actually grow, which is really, really awesome. And then what else? I think that is it for today. Yeah. With that said, take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.